Welcome, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Great to have you all. So we're expecting a few more people, everyone, so we'll get started shortly.
Okay. We have sound, huh? We can hear everybody.
We sure do.
Okay. Marilisa, can you hear me? Marilisa? Marilicia?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Good. I want to see, make sure that we're on top of this. I don't see anybody else from the, Angela's here from the Equity Board. Angela's here. Got some new folks.
We'll give it just another moment, folks, and then we'll go ahead and start.
What is broadcast, Jamil?
So we have, and I'll get into it in just a moment, but we have quite a few support staff who are here to provide translation, interpretation, I should say. And then we have ASL, American Sign Language. We have deaf interpreters as well. So I'll cover that in just a moment. All right, well, we're at about 5 minutes in, so we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. We want to be respectful of your time. And I know we all have other plans that we want to get to tonight, I'm sure, some dinner probably, some kids to put in the bathtub. So why don't we go ahead and jump in here. My name is Jamila Jordan, and I am the county's equity director. Really excited to be with you all here to just share an overview of the implementation team for the Race Equity Action Plan, also known as REAP. And so before we go too far into the program, I want to let you know a few housekeeping details. The first is that we are recording today's session so that other people who weren't able to make it can see what we discuss and hear what we discuss, and we'll place that on our website and have a link to how folks can access that. I also want to let you know that we have closed captioning available, and so you'll see on your toolbar at the bottom, there's an option for you to show the closed captioning. You can turn it on, you can turn it off at whatever point you want to in the meeting, but we were very much intentional about accessibility here tonight. And so in addition to that, I mentioned that we have some deaf interpreters as well who are signing in the background. You might not be able to see them, but just know that they're there. And so that's another feature for people who might use that. We also have American Sign Language tonight as well. And then we have Spanish and Vietnamese interpretation. And so if you want to access Spanish and or Vietnamese interpretation, you would click on that globe icon, and then you would select the language that you need. So if anyone needs any help with that, you can go ahead and just mention it in the chat, and then our colleagues will be able to assist you. I'm excited to share that I'm here tonight with my colleague, Manny Benitez, who is our new ASA. And we also have Angela Nicholson here as well. So why don't we go ahead and jump in. Before we get started, you can put your name in the chat. So that way we have something of a record of who was here tonight, and we could reach out to you again if you'd like that. So you can go ahead into the chat and just pop your name in there. If you want to add your affiliation or anything else, you're free to do that. So tonight, everyone, we have a pretty full agenda. We have lots to share and cover, and we really want to hear from you tonight. And so this is our official welcome, and then we're going to move into just a brief overview of the Race Equity Action Plan, also known as REAP. And we know that everyone may not be familiar with it, and so we wanted to just give people an opportunity to better understand what that plan is, how it was crafted, and then from there, we're going to go into the REAP implementation team overview. I know that's why a lot of you are here tonight, is to learn more about the implementation team. And so excited to share that with you. I also want to spend a little bit of time talking about our outreach approach, and certainly welcome your feedback and ideas as well, but we want to share with you what we're thinking. And then we want to open it up. So that part that I just shared, we'll keep that pretty brief because we really do want to hear from you tonight. So we can have a group discussion, and then we can wrap it up with announcements. Both from our team, and then you all may have some announcements that you'd like to share about other events happening. And then we'll go into next steps. Okay, so does that sound okay to everyone? Yes? All right, I'm seeing lots of heads nodding. So before we jump into it though, I do just want to share what we call brave space agreements. And just in the spirit of civility, we ask that one person speaks at a time. And I also want to note that we have interpretation here tonight, as I mentioned. So I'm going to try to slow myself down so that they're able to do what they need to do. And I ask for you all to do that too as we get into questions and comments. So just to make sure everybody can access the meeting appropriately. I also just want to be respectful of one another's opinions. If you can, share your video. It would be great to connect with you that way, but we understand if you don't want to. I want to mention this: take space and make space. So we want to make sure that you're asking the questions that you want, you're sharing the feedback that you want, but we also want to hear from everybody here tonight in the Zoom room. So take space and make space for others. Using I statements is something that I think is always valuable rather than generalizations. And then last but not least, use the chat as you want to share comments in your own words. And so our team is working behind the scenes to respond to some of your questions or comments that you put in the chat, but just note that we will get to those questions and comments. All right, so just wanted to share those. So let's get into it. I want to talk to you about the Marin County Race Equity Action Plan, also known as REAP. And this plan was an update to the one that was developed in 2017. And that 2017 version was really much more internal to the county, really focused a lot on operations and how the county internally can deepen the race equity work. And then in 2021, we developed the Race Equity Planning Committee, which was really a community-centered process, a community-driven process. And the Board of Supervisors, they allocated $1.7 million to fund the recommendations that came out of that committee. And what you see on the right there is the cover of the 2022 plan. And really excited to share that the board accepted this plan back in 2022, or I should say in February rather. And so just a little bit about who was on this committee, how was it constructed? It was all residents of Marin County and from different areas of the county as well. And we really focused in on some key diverse communities. One is seniors and ages 60 and older. We also wanted to hone in on youth and young adults between the ages of about 15 and 25. We were focusing on Black, Indigenous, and people of color, also known as BIPOC. Wanted to make sure that we centered women and also community members from the LGBTQ plus community. And then we also wanted to focus on individuals who were undocumented or underdocumented. And then lastly, last but not least, any community members facing chronic illness, whether it be mental health challenges or disabilities or anything of that nature. So that's who the committee was made up with, but this is them coming to life right here. So this is the group, most of them here who really were leading the way in developing this planning process. And so you might see some folks who you recognize in the Zoom room here tonight who are on this slide. And that committee came up with 3 primary priorities. The first one is economic opportunity. The second one is mental health. And the third one is housing. And we asked them to really be intentional about where they wanted to focus their efforts, knowing that we couldn't solve everything in this planning process. And so they focused on these 3 priorities. And some of the actions that emerged from their work was one, establishing a mental health access fund. We also looked at establishing an $18 minimum wage ordinance, creating a housing security loan program, launching a mental health summit and anti-stigma campaign, as well as creating new professional development programs that are specifically geared towards youth and young adults. So these are just a sampling of some of those priority actions. And I encourage you, if you hadn't had a chance yet, to look at the plan, because I think it's just chock full of really great information, and you can see the process, how it really unfolded. So now let's talk a little bit about the REAP implementation team. I think that's why a lot of you are here tonight. So the proposed composition of this team is 23 individuals total. And that includes community members, nonprofits, as well as county, city, and town department staff. And so we're going to break out those 23 individuals into 3 action groups. And those action groups are going to be consistent with mental health, economic opportunity, and housing. And you can see the breakdown here of how we're envisioning this. And so we very much want residents and community members to be firmly out front, leading the way. And so they have the largest number of participants. And then we also wanted to tap into our community-based organizations, our community partners. And so you see the breakdown there. And then another focus is on county, city, and town staff, because we recognize that partnership is so important to making this work become real, to moving from plan to implementation. So what is this group going to do is what you might be wondering. And we have quite a few different roles here. The first one is around really developing detailed work plans to implement those actions, because we're going to need some support and help with actually scoping out how to make these things happen. So when we talk about establishing a minimum wage ordinance, well, what's that process going to be like? And we want that thought partnership to help us understand that and really move into implementation. Another one is providing updates to the community and to partners. And this is something that we heard loud and clear in the race equity planning process, is that we want to make sure that community members know this work is happening, they know how to tap into it, and that we're leveraging their best thinking as well. Another piece of the work is helping to determine the cost and the resources that are going to be needed. I think this is a really fundamental piece of the work of the implementation team, is helping the Board of Supervisors understand what are the projected costs and resources that are needed. Another piece is, I mentioned partnership. And so we want to have this team identify, well, who's already doing some of this work? Who's already doing community land trusts, for example? And how can we tap into some of those existing efforts? So maybe there's not a need to start from scratch, but instead we build on some of the really exciting work that people are already doing. This group's going to be looking at data and performance measures as well. And then we do have some meetings that, all of this doesn't happen overnight. And so we have a series of meetings that'll be taking place. And all the while, we'll be tracking the progress. So I want to share a little bit with you all about what are some of the expectations for these team members, because it's really important that we be clear and manage expectations from upfront. And so the group is going to meet about 13 times during this 13-month process. And some of you may have already seen this information in the applications, which are live, which are also in 3 languages. So that's the first piece. And we really, attendance at all of these meetings is going to be required to participate. And so if you feel like you're going to have a challenge with making, a lot of these meetings, then you should rethink the process. Perhaps you should rethink joining. And maybe there's another way that you can support this work. All the sessions are planned to occur on the 3rd Thursday of the month and take place from 6 to 8. So it'll be in the evening. They'll also be happening virtually, just given where we are with the health mandates and whatnot. So that's the way we're going to go there. And I do encourage you, if you haven't already, to really look at the application and review it to make sure that you understand what the role is and what's the required time commitment. And lastly, we want to make sure that everyone feels that their efforts and contributions are really valued. And so we're going to be providing a $50 stipend per meeting. And we ask that you do attend and fully participate in the meetings to receive that compensation. But it's just one gesture of appreciation to support people participating in the process. And our interpreters, you can flag me at any point if you feel like I'm going too quickly or I need to slow it down. Okay, so what's the timeline? I know we have a lot of questions about that. What is the timeline, you might be wondering? So we've launched the application, as I mentioned, on March 22nd. And I just want to give big kudos to our equity office team for really getting this done. And we'll keep it open for about a month or so. Okay, so it's going to close on April 22nd. So you still have plenty of time to apply. We're having this info session here tonight, as you can see. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to launch a facilitation RFP. And for some who don't know what that means, it means we're going to be looking for some consultant support to facilitate this process so that it's equity informed, it's neutral, it's transparent, and it's well documented. So that's something that I'm actually working on as we speak. And another piece is that we're going to review the applications April 25th to about the 28th. And so we'll have a team of reviewers here in the county who will help to review and evaluate the candidates. And then we'll let you know in May. We want to let people know. We don't want to drag this out. And so we'll let folks know in May of this year. And then we'll start the meetings in earnest in June of this year. And we expect that process to run till June of 2023, as I mentioned. Now, some of these dates are subject to change, but this is what we're trying to stick to, okay? So I'm going to keep moving here. What you see on the right is our flyer. And if you haven't seen it, you can download it from the website. If you want to circulate it to people who you think might be interested, we would certainly appreciate that. So outreach, how are we going to do this, everyone? And I think the big picture goal for us is to meet people where they are. And for us, that means both in-person outreach and it's also online, it's a hybrid of that. And so for in-person outreach, we're planning to flyer using our multilingual flyers. at community centers, at libraries, and other community hubs. We're also really focusing in on targeted engagement of our community partners, and that includes nonprofits and organizations and others. And we're doing some meetings with them. We're making calls. We're really trying to engage them in this work also. And then we'll be online too. So this is an info session that we're having online, as you know. We'll be sending out e-blast communications, which is just an electronic communication. Some of you may have gotten our first one that went out. I think I sent out another one as well. We're making posts on both our Office of Equity website and also the County of Marin's website, so that we're going far and wide. Social media is also really important in this work nowadays. And then we'll have some news releases as well. So these are some of the approaches that we're taking to have a hybrid approach of how to meet people where they are, whether it be at a library or whether it's from the comfort of their home and they want to be in an info session, for example. So with that, everybody, that's what we wanted to present to you tonight. And I want to make sure we have plenty of time for a discussion. So I'm going to stop this share and invite feedback, questions. And again, I ask you to just speak a little bit more slowly so that everyone can fully participate. Yes, Colleen, I see you. And anyone can raise their hand, their literal hand, or your Zoom hand. I can see you pretty well.
I can't see you. I have sun in my eyes. Hi, everyone. So I'm wondering regarding the outreach, the message, aside from community partners, early on in the planning phase, but what messages are we delivering, and who is that audience? Is it just broad spectrum Marin residents, or who is it, and what do we want to say to them?
Absolutely. And so we do want to reach a broad cross-section of the Marin County community. But I think what we found in the race equity planning process, that it was so powerful to focus in on those key groups that I mentioned. So women, BIPOC communities, people of various ages, people who might have disabilities, for example, definitely residents of Marin County are, it's important, but it's a pretty broad collection of individuals. And I think another piece to your comment, Colleen, is we have these 3 priority areas, which are mental health, housing, and economic opportunity. So we're trying to connect with organizations, with people who have been doing this work. Because one piece of feedback that we heard from the previous process was it might have been a little bit more helpful to have more experts, quote unquote, in the room. And I really see community members as experts of their own community, but people who are really steeped in some of that technical knowledge.
So the message, just to follow up, so the message to these specific groups of people will be what? Are we trying to get them engaged into programs? Are we trying to tell them that this is something that's happening? What's the message?
The primary message, Colleen, and everyone here, is to join the implementation team, to apply to join the implementation team.
Okay.
And if everyone, we can't have, you mentioned having 23 individuals, but nonetheless, if they still can be a part of this, they can still share information with the team around what are some housing initiatives that are going on? What are some mental health examples or models that are really powerful in other communities? And the same is true for economic opportunity. So the message is we have these 3 priority areas, and we want to make sure that we have the best thinking, the most inclusive thinking on this work. So those to me are the 2 primary areas.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate the question. Yes, sir, Ricardo. And you're muted right now, Ricardo.
Why don't you tell everybody about the race counts reports and our relationship as a equity entity to that race counts report, and what that race counts reports reveal I'm hoping everybody on the Zoom has had a chance to take a look at it, racecounts.org. And it didn't view us favorably. And this process is going to be directed at making some changes at the outcomes of that race count report. Jamila, why don't you tell people about that a little bit?
Sure, I'm happy to tee us off, and I'm sure you have some other thoughts, Ricardo, as well.
Oh,
But that was
yeah.
a report that was really fundamental to getting an understanding of where Marin County falls along the lines of racial equity. And when it was first developed, Marin County was the least racially equitable place really in the country, I want to say in the state, but that was a major finding. And then they did the study again, and they found that now we're the second most racially disparate place. And so what it did for a lot of people, from my perspective, is it opened a lot of eyes. People sometimes think that just because of some changes that we've experienced, that means that racial injustice doesn't occur. And that's just not true. And the data revealed that there's some major things that we need to work on. And so I think it precipitated a lot of this work that's going on right now in the county. And Ricardo, you might want to add some stuff to that too.
Well, to me, it tries to reach the heart of something that's almost insolvable, and that's racism. We can make inroads, we can treat it, we can have trainers, we can coach, we can, have different dispositions about how we view race, how we view color. And to me, it's always going to be a thing. It doesn't have to be an injurious thing. It could be, a thing that us as a society will have to deal with, one way or another. And looking at what we saw in that race counts report, it expands a lot of issues, a lot of areas within the county. Not only the three topical things that Jamila mentioned, the mental health, the employment, and the housing piece, but also covers other things that are very critical to the health, the quality of life of people living in the county, such as, police relationships, climate change, things that we didn't get to in this configuration, but we will eventually have to look at it as an equity team and say, do we want to address this now, or should we wait later? That's why my concept of equity, it's got to be holistic and whatnot. The three pieces that Jamila mentioned are something that that committee voted on to move ahead and to put these edicts in front of the boards of supervisors to allow them to register part of our thinking and to move ahead with something that's affirmative. For me, it's a little bit different, and I don't want to get into that right now, Jamila, because it embraces a lot of other different things within the county that we have to look at, which addresses the true nature of equity, racial equity, classism, and as well, because we still have problems with women, not making the same wages or being summarily dismissed, and we have to get beyond all those type of things, either through policy, through practices, or the things that we can, offer each other, that we can make people more consciously aware that equity is a big problem.
Yeah, well said. Thank you for that, Ricardo. So we recognize that we're focusing in on 3 areas, but it's not to the exclusion of a lot of other topics and challenges that we know exist, but we had to start somewhere. And so I think that work is still going on in other parts of the county. And that just wasn't what this committee decided were the priority areas that they wanted to focus on. So I see we got some new folks here in the Zoom room. If you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and type your name in the chat so we could have just a record of who was here. We could stay connected with you. But with that being said, are there other comments or feedback points that you all would like to share or questions you may have?
Hi, Jamila. This is Alexandra. Thank you for holding this info session. I'm really excited to hear about all the projects that are moving forward. But one of the things that I did kind of want to point out to what Ricardo said, that there is definitely some, like, there's such a, it's just so intertwined, right? So even as moving forward with an economic opportunity or any of the three priorities, there is going to be the inequity in some shape there that I'm sure the team would want to look at to make sure that no matter what's being built on it, that there is equity, right? So there's still that equity. There's still going to be certain issues around equity, classism, even within the new projects. And so I was just trying to really connect what he's saying with also that this is going to be a facilitated process, and that there's going to be then, with that equity also centered in, right, in focus. So it's not like we're not escaping away from any of the other issues. No doubt that the same issues that Ricardo spoke about is the reasons why these projects are being implemented and advancing equity, right? Am I understanding that right?
That's absolutely right, Alexandra. And Ricardo used the word holistic. I think of the word interdisciplinary. And so as we think about economic opportunity, there's a huge educational component to that. Do people know about where the jobs are? Do they have the qualifications? Is the pipeline available? And so there's naturally going to be other components that this team discusses and grapples with, because that's the nature of inequity. And so I don't want us to focus too much on just these three priorities, because there's inevitably going to be other topics, other strategies that we can connect to. So I appreciate what you said, Alexandra. And so I use the word interdisciplinary, holistic, inclusive. So these are all the things that are going to help establish this group's framework. And so I just wanted to make sure that that didn't get lost. But thank you for the comment. And if you are speaking, Ricardo, we can't hear you.
This thing cut off automatically, or just the way I look at it, or something like that. But anyway, before you implement the implementation team, I think we should have a review session on the equity action report, because I find some glaring mistakes, that were written into them. Give you one example. They talked about the health in doing the health delivery systems, that a portion of people were recommended to take a bus all the way to Novato to receive basic health, health treatment and things like that. That's wrong. That's at one time we were sending people on a bus to Marin General or to San Rafael, the wellness center. But that mistakes like that need to be corrected, because they talked about a 3-hour difference or 3-hour bus ride, and certainly that goes towards health equity. And we need to things like that. We need to sit down and review, or we could stay at home and just chart out certain things that are erroneous or inaccurate and send them to you. Whatever way you want to do it, we should get it done so we can have the best possible data available to each of us, so we know what each sector of the county is doing.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that, this is just one process that the county is working on. And I don't proclaim it to be the end of our discussions around racial equity. There's so much happening in the county. And so for some of these other issues that you all are bringing up, there are ways that we can point and kind of catalyze those discussions to other people who are working on them. But we want it to be focused and intentional in this work. But again, I think naturally, you mentioned transportation, for example, that's an economic opportunity issue. To me,
Sure.
that's partly an economic opportunity issue. It has implications for one's health and well-being. It has implications for where they live as well. So, these are all really connected, intertwined issues, and we want to make sure that we're thinking about them in that way, but also being focused in what this process is seeking to accomplish. And if we can't do it all in one process, we can point us into other directions where this energy can be put to. So thank you for that. I want to open it up to other folks. Anybody else want to share?
No. But is everybody going silent?
And again, you can use a chat, folks, if you prefer that. Whatever your preferred way of communication is.
Jamila, I have a question around the outreach. I know you mentioned that you were going to, reach out maybe at libraries. I imagine, I'm not sure if that's flyers, but I'm wondering what languages are you going to be posting the information to be able to join REAP?
Sure, absolutely. Appreciate that. So what we're doing is we're taking a trilingual approach to this work. And so we're doing most communications in Spanish, in Vietnamese, and in English. And so those are the three languages that we looked at in the county where we had some of the highest number of community members of English or non-English speakers, I should say. And so we focused in on those two. And but if we find that there's a need to incorporate other languages, the county is very open to that. Ms. Locks, I saw that you had a hand up a moment ago.
Yes, I did. My question is, looking forward is, I noticed that there's going to be another group application, and I'm wanting to understand why we need another layer of another team to prioritize what this team prioritizes to act upon. Why do we need another layer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question. So it's really important, I think, that we acknowledge there were some components of the previous process that could be shifted, that could be improved. And so thinking about what other voices, what other perspectives are really important to have at the table. And if you notice, Ms. Locks, we had two very specific questions in the application, and I believe you have already applied. But we certainly have one component in there of, did you participate in the previous process? Because that's going to help us know that you already have a really strong understanding of the work, of the strategies, of the actions. We ask people if they've read the Race Equity Action Plan. So these are some foundational pieces, some foundational criteria that I agree, I think it's really important. But we also recognize that there may be other voices that can bring a lot of depth of knowledge and be assets to the process as well. So I see a lot of new faces here tonight. I know we have some people who didn't get a chance to show up here. And so we're recording this session, but there's a lot of interest being generated, and we want to make sure that we're having an inclusive process. But I appreciate what you said, though. Thank you. And let's see, Alexandra, I see a hand from you.
Thank you, Jamila. I just wanted to ask, with the prior team, about how many applications did you receive initially before you decided on the team that set out these priorities?
That's a really good question. And I wasn't actually involved in that process. My colleague Sophie led it. Angela, you may be able to speak to that.
I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was a 54, 55, I think was about the number for the 20 slots that the 20 positions that we filled.
Thanks, Angela. All right, any other comments? If not, we can shift into some announcements to share, but I see we got a couple of new folks in here. Welcome. Welcome, Chris, I see you. Mr. Tron, I see you as well. Great to see you. So if there aren't any other questions, and again, this isn't the last time that we're going to be thinking about this work. We're going to be asking all of you to be agents of outreach, to be ambassadors for the process. And so we want to stay connected with you, want you to be involved. We want you to apply and to help us and bring your partnership to the work. So, and I'm looking at this comment from Colleen here. Quickly scanning the plan just now helped put all of this into context. It helped me envision which action might benefit from my participation. That's great, Colleen. Yeah, so that's why we asked that question in the application was, did you look at it? You know, so that you can have an understanding. So I appreciate that. So everyone, we don't want to keep you unnecessarily. I do have a couple of more quick slides I want to share with you just in the way of announcements, and then we can open up for any announcements that anyone else has, and then we can talk about next steps. So what I'm going to do, everyone, if it's all right with the team here, is just bring up my show again and move us along. So announcements. So this race equity action plan is just one, as I mentioned, that the county is working on from a racial equity lens. Another one that we're really excited about is what's called a participatory budgeting process. And we have about $2.5 million to fund community initiated projects.
Yes. I don't mean to interrupt you, Jamila, but this is the team that I was referring to. Why are we having this particular team? But now you're going to answer the question. Thank you.
Sure. So it's because there are different funding pots, Ms. Locks, and we were directed by the federal government this is how we applied for it. And so the board has directed our team to launch this process. So this comes from other mandates in the county. And this is just another way to engage community members, to spread the work, to spread that intersectionality that we were just talking about. So again, we're thinking about these three primary areas of mental health, economic opportunity, and housing, but we're going to get a lot of applications. We're going to get a lot of grant proposals from other organizations who want to make change in different ways, who want to make change in the way of transportation, for example, who want to make change in the way of early care and education. So we want to open this other process up so that there can be some other work done to move the needle around race equity in the county. So we're really excited about this. It's pretty innovative, cutting edge. We're taking our cues from other communities who are doing similar work and really learning from their processes. And the first step in this process is to launch a funding and outreach committee. And this will be 9 residents who really want to take the lead on the outreach work and also helping to evaluate the proposals that we get. So more to come on this. We're having an info session on this work on April 5th, which is next Tuesday. So you can check out our website for more details. We'll be sending out another communication about this as well. But I just wanted to lift this opportunity up for folks who might think, well, that REAP implementation team, that doesn't really suit what I want to do. So we have lots of ways for people to connect to this racial equity work. And again, it's happening April 5th is our info session, and there'll be lots more details to come. I also want to share this, and I know it's a little bit of an eye test. We've also sent this out. It's on our website, but this really is a summary of some of the major equity investments in the county. So you see there, we have a total of 6.7 million, and we have 1.7 for the Race Equity Action Plan. We have 2.5 million for the participatory budgeting process that I just talked about. And then lastly, we also wanted to encourage our county departments to really move the needle and actively work to advance racial equity. And so we're allocating about 2.5 million for that. And I don't know if some of you saw the recent board session, but we got some really, really exciting proposals, some really dynamic proposals. One is the Clean Slate program, which is about expunging records that really just damaged the rest of people's lives. We got some around a park prescription program, which is encouraging people to get outside. After the pandemic, I think we were all cooped up and parks became such a community hub for us. and lots of other proposals. So we wanted to encourage our county departments to do some of this work as well. So again, this is just another shot. So I hope everyone can see it clearly, but it's just really reiterating what I just shared. So with that, I want to just pause here and see if people have other announcements, if there are other meetings or things that you want to make known here tonight. We want to make sure that this is a space for us to connect. So any other announcements that folks have? I know there's an ISOG meeting tomorrow, for example.
Yeah.
Yep, Ricardo, I see you. Go for it.
Okay, I got four things. Y'all bear with me now. I think that, you know, throughout this process, we need a definition of equity that everybody is very comfortable with, because like I said, Marin is a very unusual county, very wealthy, very beautiful. You know, it has its own, you know, equity problems, but we need a definition of equity building, you know, that matches the county needs, that everybody feels comfortable with. Number one, have you talked about a pipeline by which we can submit proposals? Is that available right now?
Yes, thank you for that question. So the first step in this participatory budgeting work is developing this committee. And then the next step is to invite community organizations, community partners, or a collection of community members who have a fiscal sponsor, someone like a 501c3, for example, to support them in that work. But we're opening this up. So we want to get a whole wide array of proposals.
Okay.
And
who do you submit them to?
so you'll be submitting them to the county. And then, as I mentioned, that committee, they'll help to evaluate those proposals. So they'll have a pretty clear set of criteria around their evaluation. And then the third step, and I know it's getting a little bit complicated, but this is the nature of this type of work, is to invite the community, right? So everyone in Marin County can then vote on which proposals do they think are most relevant, are most timely, are most equity centered. And then from there, those will be funded. So anybody can submit proposals, and then we're asking the community to then vote on those.
I like to see how that's going to work.
It's dynamic. It's dynamic. And now we're looking at communities in Oakland. We're looking at
What do you mean by community? Are you talking
we're looking
about?
at other cities who have done this very work. So we're not the first place to do this type of work. Seattle, Oakland, Buffalo, the list goes, Philadelphia, the list goes on and on. So there's a lot of communities who have already done this type of work.
So by inference, you're talking about communities outside of Marin County that would evaluate the stuff that we have to do over here.
No, I was just saying that we're looking at them as models, right? So only the community members in Marin would vote on the proposals.
I guess what I'm driving at, who would be the selection process? I mean, what is the selection process, and who would make the decisions on which proposal will be accepted within the county?
Yeah, great question. And I know it's a little bit wonky, but so we would get proposals from community organizations, foundations, nonprofits, you name it. And then we'd ask that funding committee, that funding and outreach committee, to review those. So they would be the first step of review. Okay. And they'd have some very clear criteria that they would use to evaluate the proposals. But the third step, and I just want to be clear, the third step is for community members in Marin. So whoever is a resident of Marin would then vote on the proposals that they feel most strongly about. Okay. And we're going to cover a lot of this in the info session next Tuesday.
Okay.
And yes, Colleen, we're going to share, just quickly, Ricardo, I want to respond to Colleen's comment here in the chat. So we're going to share some of those examples in that info session, Colleen. But I mentioned a few of the cities that we're already looking at. But yeah, thank you for that.
Okay. One thing that's very critical to this whole process, and I got to tell everybody, I've been doing this type of equity work for the last 20 years down in Marin City, and I've seen every permutation of working on boards, how boards operate, and how communities fight to get out of different silos, and how they fight to get a unity within community. And it's a very hard thing to do. But the thing that's always missing is always that they never look at how systems work. They never come up with a way of measuring, the equity components within a system and creating the steps that identify or what we call progress indicators within those particular systems. So at the end, somewhere down the road, you can look at these progress indicators and tell if you are building equity within that system and that system is improving. Now, I don't know what we're going to do about this, Jamila, because equity measurement is very, very controversial, at this particular point. And we definitely, at the end of the road or in the middle of the road or some quarters within the road, are going to have indicators that we can feed back into the people, so they can see that this equity committee is working and that what the work that we're doing is building a level of trust in that equity building process. So I don't know if that's would be open to a proposal or not. I would think it is, because there's some head smart people out here who know a little bit about qualitative and quantitative measures.
Love that idea, Ricardo. And so we might get some proposals that really speak to the challenge of measuring equity.
Yeah,
because there's so many different indicators. The data is often coming from different sources. So we would love to have some of those smart people, as you just said, to be a part of doing this work, to be partners in this.
Okay, thank you. And the last thing is, we have our SOGI meeting tomorrow, and it's a Zoom meeting. Everybody's open to it. And some of the stuff that we talk about and some of the key decision makers around the county come, join us. So, Marilisa, are you still there?
I think she had to hop off.
Oh, she had to hop off. Well, I can't use this chat thing for some reason. I can't put my messages in the chat. But anyway, maybe I'm doing it wrong. But anyway, it's at 11 o'clock, and I'll try to post the Zoom link in the chat. And if anybody's open, to join us, and anybody's open, to give their elevator speech about what they're doing, what they see in the way of equity and what their community is doing. If you got a good idea, just lay it on us, and I'll pass it on. And Jamila, I'll pass it along to her.
Got it. Absolutely. And maybe if I can dig it up here, I can pop it in the chat for you. But thank you for that. And then I just want to respond to Colleen's comment here. There's so many different models that exist, Colleen, but this is also a very emerging field around measurements of race equity. And so I think a lot of us are figuring it out. As I mentioned, there are different data sources. There are race equity indices. There are equity atlases, for example. So there's a lot of great movement happening, but it certainly is challenging at times. So, but yeah, we have models to look to.
Okay, if you could pop that into the chat, I would really appreciate it.
You got it. And I'm going to go to Alexandra right now. Alexandra, do you still have a hand up?
I apologize. I was having a hard time unmuting. I wanted to just piggyback on what Ricardo said around the, having equity and it being measured as to, what the projects are. And I just wanted to add that it really does then, it brings in the accountability, right, of the project. And so I think it's a great point that he made, because it is, in order to be able to measure something, it really holds us accountable to do that, right? And so, and I also wanted to ask, how many members are you going to recruit for the outreach committee? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. We're looking at 9 members for that committee, and we didn't want it to get too unwieldy. So we've been seeing other models, and that seems to be kind of the general ballpark. So we're looking at 9 members. And let's see, isn't the county engaging with GEAR? That's another great, yeah, thank you for that, Ms. Locks. So that's another source of where a lot of cities and counties are looking to help measure, or looking to help make some of these tough decisions and to see what models exist. So that's another one. Thank you for pointing that out. And by the way, Marin County is a member of GEAR, and actually will be going to the conference in April. So lots to learn, and I'm happy to bring it back to these different groups and share out what new knowledge there is. So Ricardo, you see I popped that in the chat. So everybody, that's the ISOG meeting. Any other announcements?
I see it here. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Any other announcements from the team that you want to make? If not, I'm going to bring my show back up and we're going to keep rolling.
No, I'm good. I'm good to go.
All right, let's do it then.
Right now.
All right, so hopefully you can see this okay. Let's see here. So next steps, everyone. So just want to quickly remind you all of what we covered here tonight. So please do apply for the REAP implementation team if you're interested. We have it in Spanish, Vietnamese, and English for the application. It will be open till about April 22nd. So check it out and share information about it. If it's not your cup of tea based on what you learned here tonight, you might know somebody, you might know other partners, you might know other residents who want to be involved in this type of work. So we want to extend that invitation to you. And then I want to mention that, we really are excited about building up our subscription list, our mailing list. And so we want to help people stay involved, to stay connected to what's happening in the Office of Equity and also within the County of Marin, more broadly speaking. So that's another way for you to connect. Check out our website. We're doing our best to make it even more dynamic lately. So, and then lastly, there's that participatory budgeting session, or the Funding and Outreach Committee, I should say, which is on next Tuesday. So just a couple of ways that you can stay linked in, stay tapped in, as they say, to what's going on. And with that, I just want to thank you all for being here tonight, taking time out of your day, your evening to be with us, for asking these really great and important questions, which only will make the process better. So thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a great rest of your evening. Thanks so much. And I really want to give a quick shout out to our interpreters behind the scenes, our broadcast team behind the scenes here, who just did their best to make this meeting as accessible as possible. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great evening.
There's a lady who's doing the signing.
Yes.
Over here. Well, thank her, because we just saw that movie Coda. It won the Academy Award. I hope everybody sees that. That's a real good movie, and for the signing lady, I know she will really appreciate something like that. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Be well.
All right.